So hi everyone, it's Deborah Carter here from Preparation Tech. Today we have an awesome interview lined up. We are talking with Alexia Charoud, who is a sound designer and a music producer. And if you're like me, you know, I did kind of the classic music lessons, but in this day and age, technology is really kind of redrawing the landscape around music. So I'm so happy to be able to talk with Alexia and for her to explain some of the changes that technology has made in terms of the music industry. So welcome, let's take it away. Tell us what you do.
Hello, okay, so my name is Alexia, nice to see you all. So I am a sound designer and music producer, but my work is really at the crossroads between sound design, music production, experience design, music technology, and sound art. I kind of try to do as many things as I can. So I also do sound installations for exhibitions or that type of stuff. But what I mainly do for a living is making sound for films, for example. So that implies doing field recording, location recording. That could be on a movie set, or that could be just walking around somewhere with my recorder and my mic and recording soundscapes and just sounds of the exterior. That also means recording sounds in studios. So I can do Foley, which means, you know, watching a film and doing the sounds, like, for example, the shoes sounds, if there is a sound of shoes missing in a scene or something like that. And then sound design, which is more finding the sound identity of a film, same recording sounds, creating sounds with synthesis, with synths, for example. And then there is also film scoring. There is the more engineering part, which is film mixing and engineering. So, for example, cutting the dialogue, cleaning the dialogue, making it more audible, and mixing it all together with the other bits of the dialogue and with the music and the ambience, and yeah, that's basically, and the SFX. So that's basically it. And then I also work as a music producer. That's mainly independent work. So that's mainly, I do it for myself as a musician, but I also do it with other people. And so that kind of has the same, that involves the same skill set as the more film sound design type of work, which is recording, producing, creating sounds with synthesizers or with whatever I find. Also using a lot of sounds I recorded outside to make a really homemade and self-crafted sound design for the music I make as well. And yeah, and then, you know, producing this music, mixing it, and then collaborating with people on the mixing as well, and then putting it out, releasing it, and sort of communicating around it, and all of that stuff that's kind of involved in the whole producer role in music.
Right. Now, I saw a really cool video of you at a fashion show, and you were actually producing the music as the models walk down the catwalk. Tell us about some of your favorite projects.
Okay, so I have a lot of favorite projects. This is a really nice one. I don't know exactly which one you're talking about because I did a few fashion shows, but basically the music I produce is quite, it kind of it's, let's say it's pop enough to speak to people, but also kind of queer enough to intrigue, and soundscapey enough to create interesting ambiences for people to not only have to focus on the music, but also so they can focus on something else that's happening visually. And so this got me into fashion shows. So I do different things for fashion shows. It could be just soundscapes for a catwalk. So it could be like creating music live. Like I would be hidden somewhere, making the music, and kind of, for example, last fashion show I did, I was kind of hidden somewhere in the back, and I was, so the models were like walking on the stage, and one of the dresses, it was Manon Planche. She's a really, really amazing fashion designer, a French fashion designer in London. And one of the dresses she had designed was made of kind of all made of crystal bits. And so when the model was walking, you could hear the crystals like walking around, but I kind of created more layers of crystal sounds and like was following the model walking on the catwalk with the sounds, and it made this experience way more interesting and interactive, rather than just, you know, having this kind of like pumping music that you usually have on catwalks for fashion shows. I think it's really interesting to play around with that and create different types of ambiences. Another one I did for the same fashion designer was in Last Fashion Week in February. And this was, I was also wearing one of the looks, and the models were walking around the space wearing the rest of the collection. And I was kind of creating soundscapes live as I was singing as well, playing my own songs. And then it was really this idea of creating a total experience, kind of like a total art experience, where also there were projections and all that type of stuff. And I was kind of challenging the kind of typical approach to catwalks, which is quite, you know, traditional and quite uninteresting sometimes, because it's really just models walking on the catwalk with this pumping sound.
Come on, let's go, it's about time. As the evening falls, I've just got these words on my mind. I'm begging you, please, the ship is coming, it's coming, it's coming, it's coming. Look in the starry sky, it's full of you, my love.
And I really like the live aspect of my work, because there is this aspect of the work, and then there is the whole other aspect when I'm designing sounds for films, for example, which takes some time going outside to record sounds, which I really enjoy. But then it's so often also just being behind the computer, you know, mixing stuff, being on softwares and everything. So it's really nice to have this balance and to also be able to be on the stage doing stuff live, being in the presence of people is really, really great. So that's one of the really lovely projects I had recently. Then in terms of more interactive work, I recently did a project called Chair Quartet, which was with a team of people, like two friends. We managed to go into festivals with this project, in Sonar Festival in Barcelona, for example. And so this was basically more about music technology and interactive music. So we basically created chairs that were reactive to movement, and we created those 4 chairs with which people could interact together to create a musical piece. So each chair would have their own sound, and according to the way you move on them, or according to the way you interact with them, you create musical sounds, and then you can all interact together with people who are playing around with you. And I also did a project that was about revealing a soundscape with light. So that was, the light was revealing the sounds, but this happened during lockdown. So I never managed to properly exhibit that in an exhibition space, unfortunately, but this will happen in the future, I hope. And then I could mention 2 others, so you can have a kind of a vision of the kind of wide range of things that I do in my everyday life job. So sound for animation films, that's really, really interesting. The latest one I did was also really cool. It's called Mercury's Retrograde, and it's a short film that a fellow student from Royal College of Art made, and it got into good festivals, got an award as well, which was really great. And this film was really interesting to make because it was during lockdown, and it's hard during lockdown because you can't really, you know, if I need a very specific sound, I couldn't go outside to record it. I couldn't go and buy stuff to record it. So I really had to like do with all I had in my house at that moment. And there were some really specific sounds, like a ball pit sound, for example, like there was a huge baby jumping in a ball pit, and you need to have those ball pit sounds. And I didn't have anything to do that. So I had to like find ways, like I put a lot of old batteries in a plastic box, and I had like to shake it and like create lots of layers of sound. And, you know, it was really hard, but in the end it worked. And I think that was quite an interesting challenge to work on that. And the film did really well. And it's, you know, animation film is really interesting to work on because you really have to create the whole sonic identity of the film and the whole sonic world of the film. Whereas live action is a bit less creative in terms of what you have to create. And then maybe one last one. I'm currently working on more documentary type of projects, which I'm working on a feature film at the moment, which is with this queer collective called Rebel Dykes. And this is a documentary about the kind of lesbian punk scene of the 80s in London, which is really, really interesting. And as it's a documentary, it's also a lot of different challenges in terms of sounds. So also really, really interesting to work on.
Cool. Now, what do you consider yourself? Are you a musician, a technologist, all of the above? What do you see yourself as?
Yeah, it's a really tough question. I think what I try to do is, because there is a very blurry line between my artistic practice sort of and between what I call my job. And I think I call myself a sound designer and music producer because those types of skill sets are like what I can use to work for people. But then in between that, there is so many other things that I like to do. And I think, yeah, it's really hard to say. I would say that I'm a creative and I can kind of work with what I have. And it's all around sound design and music, but then it can be, you know, extended to interactive music. It can be extended to different types of fields. But what I try to do, and I think that's really important, because I feel like a lot of people who are into sound design and music maybe came into those pathways because they were originally driven by their will to do their own music, for example, or to create their own stuff. And for me, it was really, really important as I started work to have more and more work, to set a boundary between what I want to do as my own creative practice and what I want to do as a professional. Because I feel like the pressure, especially in music, the pressure to have to do something that sells and to have to do something that you can make money out of is really, really difficult. So I feel like separating the creative part and the professional part is really important, because then you don't have all that pressure weighing on your own creative practice, which can, you know, you can get really dry from this really, really soon. And so what I tend to try to do is to really have the work that's like, okay, I'm working for these people, I'm doing sound design for these people, I'm doing music production for these people, but this doesn't have to do with what I want to create myself. And then what I want to create myself is this, but I don't expect any money to come out of it, because otherwise it's going to be so difficult. And then there is this and this, and usually it's always kind of in between both, because people usually like what I do, and so that's why they come to me for me to work for them. And then it's always a bit of this going into that. And
I like this because I was doing some research on you and I was trying to figure out what box to put you in, which was my first mistake. Your explanation is perfect, and I think this is really useful, that you can be a musician but have this profession that you do commercial work for, but still stay true to your own
exactly.
own desires and stuff. That's really important. My next question, tell us how you got there. What kind of a kid were you? Were you crazy about music?
Well, you know, it's funny because I wasn't really at all. When I was a kid, I was creating a lot of things. Like I was drawing a lot, I was singing a lot, I was doing a lot of things, but I was not trained in music or anything. I think, you know, because I was in a family that's quite scientific, and that really didn't have any idea of the whole creative world and the whole creative field. And so I was always kind of destined to go into more of a kind of scientific traditional pathway. And music for me was always something that I did on the side. It was kind of like my bubble. Also kind of growing up as a queer person in a, you know, kind of traditional family kind of always had me, it was kind of more like a personal inclination to just go into some kind of artistic creative activities, to kind of have my bubble. And this was all like self-taught, and I was all doing it kind of by myself. And then at some point, when I finished my BA, my first round of studies, I thought that my input in the world actually had to be something more creative, because I studied art history and theory, and I really, really enjoyed it. I think it was really fascinating, and it still really kind of permeates the way I interact with people now, and it is still in my work now. But as I got out of it, I thought that I really had something to do with the creative world. And it's not because my family wasn't in that world that I couldn't try to be in that world. And I think that forced me to really be passionate and to really like force for it, because it was not, you know, it was not there on the plate. You know, it was just, I had to fight for it to get in this field. You know, I was composing music, and I was kind of the leader in this kind of teenage band, and I was working with this male producer who was recording and who was producing the music, and who really had his hands on the final product that the music would be. And I felt like this was wrong, because I needed to have my hands on my own music, and needed to be able to do it. And I didn't want to perpetuate this cliche of the girl singer and composer who depends on their male counterpart producer. And so that's when I told myself, no, I need to go and study it myself. And I'm sure I can make it in this world if I really work hard enough. And so that's when I decided to go to London to study audio production. Yeah.
Great. Who were your role models? Did you have role models, mentors that really pushed you to go into this?
Well, I think because it all came from a very personal place, And because I was really not at all in the field before getting there, I did have some role models, but it was more like, you know, musicians that I loved, like Joan Jett. I was like really in love with Joan Jett, and I was like, yeah, I want to be like Joan Jett, that kind of stuff. So it wasn't like role models in the field that I knew I wanted to follow. But then, you know, even this man that I was working with, he kind of encouraged me to also try to find my independence. So it was really important. And then I think it was that, and then all the readings that I was doing, it was more about readings than about people that inspired me that I would have encountered, because I was so away from this field. And I read, for example, The Soundscape by Murray Schafer. This book really inspired me because it made me want to be even more careful about this soundscape around me and how it was important to protect all those beautiful sounds that we have in the environment. And I think this, plus the fact that I wanted to do music, made me at the same time want to study it and to understand it more. And also it kind of gave me the first approach of, I mean, it gave me the sense that I wanted to both do sound and to really focus on sound and all the richness of the medium of sound, and to do music as well. So that's why I kind of have this sound designy aspect to sound in music too.
Yeah. So tell us about this, because I found your whole study path interesting, because I think I read here that you went from studying economics to history and arts theory in France, and then you made this huge leap into audio production and sound design at the Royal College of Art in London. I mean,
exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. I think, I mean, I did study economics for a year because, and that's what I said before, because my family didn't understand that there were other types of paths that were in the creative industry. And also I didn't really know about it because I was never really taught about it. And that's actually a shame. So that's why there was kind of a compromise, because I really wanted to do music, but my parents were like, no, this is not a career. You can't do a career out of music. And then I was like, maybe they're right. And I can't be independent just now. So maybe I should just do something that's gonna give me a job in the end. And so we kind of found this compromise that would study economics, and then I would be able maybe to market my music. You know, it was kind of this crooked compromise that I had to follow. And so I did 1 year of economics, and then I realized, this is really not me. Like, this is, I'm never going to be good at this because I really don't like it at all. And it was interesting to go through this phase, because then it really made me have the passion and the will to go out of it and to do something that I really wanted to do, and that I thought I would be good at. And so then I jumped into art history and theory because I didn't know of any other paths that would, you know, match what I wanted to do with creative things. But I really enjoyed it. But then that's what I said before, when I ended my course, I realized that it didn't give me anything practical and anything creative, and that's what I really wanted to do. And then there was this whole producer thing that I talked about, and so that's why it kind of pushed me to go to London. And then that's where I found the more creative part of my work. But as I arrived in Westminster, which was my first MA, I also realized that I had really idealized the whole music production field, because, you know, for me, I approached it with music is really magical. You create music. I really had this kind of pure and innocent approach to music, when what we were taught in this MA, which otherwise was really interesting in terms of technical skills learned, was that you had to kind of like think of music as a product, like a good that you had to produce as a means to be then consumed and sold to a target audience. And it was this really kind of commercial approach to music, which was really far from what I had imagined in the first place. And I think at the end of this MA, where I learned so many things, because it was all so new for me, and it was like, you know, so much to learn, and I had so much to catch up on, I realized that it was also not really my vision of it, and I really wanted to expand more. So as I was starting to work on music production and on sound design, I thought I'll just try to study it some more, to understand more and to experiment more. And the sound design masters in Royal College of Art was more about that. It was more about experimenting with sound, understanding the medium of sound, and placing it into exhibitions, placing it into interactive experiences. And this is what really completed me, let's say.
I think what's really interesting is also that, like you said, you came at this with no real background. So you had to learn all of the technology and the technical skills. Can you talk about this process? Like, what did you learn from a technical skills aspect? And how did you learn it? Because you had a lot of catching up to do, probably.
Yeah, well, I didn't sleep at all for a year. It was really, really intense. And also, Yeah, because I was one of the only girls actually in the MA. I was the youngest person on the course as well. And seeing all these people that already had experience in the field and arriving there was really, really impressive. And it also didn't really feel so much like a safe space because we didn't have any women teachers. It was only men, and they were all really nice. But the thing is, you kind of need to have more variety of people in a place where, you know, you don't know anything, you're so new, you're really stressed out because you're paying for a master's, and you're, you know, it's a really difficult context. And so yeah, I just had to work a lot. I think I had to work like 3 times as much as other people just to catch up on everything. And so to do that, I was lucky because I was in a master's and we had resources available. So for example, we had online resources like now it's LinkedIn Learning. It used to be Linda back then. So all the stuff that I wasn't able to catch up on during the classes, I was able to catch up on with the online courses, which is great because you don't need to be in a master's to do that. Like, for example, if people that want to do music production but don't want to study it in a master's or in a BA want to study it, they still can do it online, which is really, really great. So I spent a lot of hours watching the Linda courses. I spent loads and loads of hours in the studios, in the university studios, learning everything I could, using all the microphones, using all the desks, like really trying to learn everything I possibly could learn.
What about the software?
Well.
What about the software?
Software, yeah, I did learn on lynda.com, the now LinkedIn Learning. They have really, really good basic courses for all the different software. So Logic Pro, Ableton, Pro Tools, Studio One, I think, Cubase. I can't remember exactly which ones I learned on there, but I learned some of them online. But there are also a lot of YouTube videos for people who are listening and who are interested in discovering the softwares. There are many tutorials everywhere on YouTube. Most of them are free. So it's quite easy to like catch up on something or like to start learning something, especially because I had this in parallel of my classes, which gave me the more kind of practical work. Yeah, so I would say I learned a lot through the softwares and a lot through the actual classes, but they weren't enough because I had so much to catch up on.
Right. And what about programming? Did you have to have any background in coding?
I didn't have any. I think it's been the same for everything I've done. Like each time I came to some field and I had no background at all, and I had to like catch it up on the fly. But no, for the programming, I wouldn't say I'm a good programmer. I would say I know how to do what I want to do, but I don't have all the background. So usually I would try to collaborate with people who would help me or who would know more than me about a specific issue or a specific way to achieve something. And then I would learn from them and try to apply it myself, you know, collaborate with people. And that's how I got to do quite complex coding and quite complex technological devices. But I did not have any background in coding. But that's the same, learning online with what's the name of it? It's gonna come back. And then learning. Huh?
Not GarageBand.
Oh no, GarageBand. GarageBand is like it's the basic audio software of Apple.
Right.
Yeah.
But a lot of the kids that we teach, I run a tech education academy. That's their first entree into
But it's
music.
great. It's, you know, when I was actually now that I think about it, when I was a kid, I remember there was GarageBand on my parents' laptop, and I remember using it, like maybe I used it twice, but it gave me the first notions of how to use Logic Pro, which is the professional Apple software for sound editing. And I think, yeah, using GarageBand, if I hadn't used it when I was a kid, even though I barely used it, maybe it would have taken me more time for it to become intuitive to use an audio software. So definitely, yeah, GarageBand for sure. Mm-hmm. But for audio programming, I was thinking, so there is Max MSP, and there are loads of tutorials that are free on Max MSP, which is great. And I was thinking of the free user database. Like there is a lot of sharing online about all this programming because it's all really experimental and people like to share the codes and share everything. So there are loads of resources online as well. So even without any background, there is always a way to find what you want, how to do what you want to do, I would say.
And that's the beauty of this, you know. So a key skill that people have to have in this day and age is being able to find the resources and to teach themselves without the kind of the participation of a formal teacher.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. And it's really important. I think both are really important. But yeah, I think we're really lucky just to have all this knowledge accessible. Definitely.
Absolutely. So in your opinion, what is the mindset and what are the personal characteristics of someone who's successful in music production, sound design, this kind of stuff?
I think, okay, so in the actual world, most, I guess this field is still really masculine and really, it's still, it depends, because the thing is I'm working on independent projects. So I don't depend on the big houses, like I don't depend on the big studios, which is a completely different world. And when you get in this world, it's really different. Like, for example, when I had interviews in studios, etc., it's really mostly men, and it's quite, I don't know, I feel like it's quite stuck, like it's, it's stuck in this industry process of things, and I'm not really into that. And that's why I went into more kind of independent projects, which is tougher. And I think so for that, because this is my experience, the qualities you have to have is a lot of passion, because everything you have to do it by yourself. You have to find people that are going to want to work with you and not going to work with you again. And, you have to slowly build your little network of people, and you have to be, you have to really want it to make it, because so many people want to do it. So many people want to do music production. So many people want to work in music. And if you don't work a lot, it's going to be tough. It's going to be difficult. And I know a lot of people in audio, especially, because I mean, every creative field is tough to work in, but audio is specifically difficult. So I'd say being really passionate is really important, working a lot as well, because there is not only the creative part of it that's important, but also all the technical stuff is important to know. And if you master your technical stuff, it's going to be so much easier to find projects that you love, and projects that, match what you want to, that are in line with what you want to do. And then, yeah, I'd say also kind of always being true to your own creative sensibility, because I think that's what makes you different from other people. I feel like one of the reasons why people come back to me or people want to work with me is because I'm at the same time listening to what they really want to do. Like, I'm not trying to impose my vision on their work. Also, because in sound, it's really important to be listening. But also because they know that I have this specific touch that they enjoy. And I think that's the combination of both that, makes them want to work with you again and again and again.
Excellent. What do you think schools could be doing better to engage kids around music, design, art? And what can you recommend some specific activities that parents, caregivers, teachers, and school guidance counselors, so the adults in kids' lives, can encourage kids to do so that they can kind of pursue and explore what they can do with tech and music and sound?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I feel like that's exactly what has been missing when I was a kid, or when I was in high school or middle school or whatever. There is no visibility at all in the I mean, back then, maybe now there's been some progress and I don't know about it, but back then there was no vision at all on what the creative world had to offer in terms of jobs. And so it was really like, but especially maybe it's where I grew up as well, it was really like, there is no way you can have a serious job out of this.
Where did you grow up?
In France, in Paris. But I was in this high school, and I was in the science pathway, and my parents are really scientific as well, so it was, for them, it was not even possible to imagine a career in the artistic field. But even counselors, for example, I remember going to the counselor and asking them about possibly working in arts, working in music, and they had no idea whatsoever what I could do. Especially, I don't know I think in France, maybe we have less paths to study audio production, etc. I think maybe in London there are more options, but they had no idea. And I think if I had someone telling me, oh yeah, some people do this, if I had introduced to me kind of, like my path, for example, is really wiggly. Like, I would have never known that a path like that was possible back then. if I had people telling me, oh yeah, this person does that and it's really specific, but it's what they do, and you know, maybe you could do this, it would have been so much better, because I was only presented with very kind of stereotyped traditional paths that I could do. It's like, yeah, you can be an engineer, you can be an economist, you can be that. But in the creative field, there are so many different pathways. And I feel like what you're doing here is really good, because that's exactly what you're trying to do, like showing to people that there are different types of path. And if you work hard enough, and if you really feel like you can do it and that you're good at it, then you can actually do it. So I feel like, yeah, talking more about it, doing more research about it, and introducing people who actually work in the field would be a great thing.
And specific things that parents and caregivers can do. So I mentioned GarageBand because a lot of our students, they're just like on it. What other things could they be doing, especially to get the technical skills? Because you know, what we try to teach kids in our programs too is, back in the day, people who were musicians, they had their sheet music and they had their instrument, and that's how they produce music. But it's completely different now, because your computers are basically devices that create music. Yeah.
Well, I think it's a really good thing to teach them GarageBand, for sure. I think it's also, there's something a bit tricky about technology, is that sometimes it's too easy to produce, and then it's easy to lose touch of what you actually wanted to do in the first place. So I think it's great that those kids keep working a lot on the music outside of the box, outside of the softwares and outside of everything, and then think of the software as a way to embellish it, as a way to record it, as a way to make it available to the world. So that's one thing that I thought about. And then in terms of what they can do to get kids to interact and to learn the technology, I feel simple softwares like GarageBand, you know, there are after GarageBand there is Logic, but Logic you have to pay for it. It's not that expensive when you're a student, but then there are some free audio softwares that you can start with to have something a bit more complex, and then, you know, learn basic things like EQing, compressing, etc. It's really not that complicated. If you have a software, like an easy software, you can have like your online courses or whatever that's free as well, and then learn the very basic skills. So if you have, I think Reaper, for example, is a free audio software. It's a bit complex, but it's, you know, there is a lot of resources available. And I think, yeah, GarageBand is also a really good thing. And yeah, I don't see any other.
What about music lessons?
Oh yeah, music lessons. I mean, yeah, music lessons for sure. I think it's really important, but I didn't take any, so.
Wow. And what about just like, you're into making these sounds, like you go out into nature and into the city, like what can a kid be doing? Like, is it possible for kids to be doing this kind of stuff?
You know, it's so, I love going outside and record sounds. I have my little recorder, I have my microphone, and I have my headphones. And so what I do is usually I walk somewhere and just really listen to things. And when I hear that a soundscape in some place is really interesting, I would just take my gear out and record it. And ever since I've been doing that, I've been listening to the world so much more, and I find so many interesting things in the sonic world that I was never aware of before. And I think that's also something that kids can do, like just walk around and listen to the world around them. It's just so many things you discover that you weren't aware of before is really, really, really great. And also, you know, you can just record with your iPhone. Like, you don't need to have very specialized equipment to go and record sounds. And that's one of the first things I learned in sound design, is that you can do it with anything. You can just, you know, go around, record sounds with your iPhone or with whatever little recorder you have, even if it's like an old cell phone, anything that can record, and then you can just put that into your software, listen to it, like, you know, manipulate it, turn it around, and do so many different things with it. And, you know, the sonic possibility is endless. So yeah, that's definitely something that also I would encourage kids to do, like just go around and listen to the world outside.
Awesome. I think this is I'm so happy with this interview, because it just shows you that, you know, the tech should not be the barrier, right? It's a tool.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's your passion for sound and music, and all it does is help you to explore that. And like you said, to distribute it and this kind of thing, and make it sound better, like produce it. So yeah, thank you very much for this interview. I think it's going to be super helpful for the kids out there who are into like music and into video and into this kind of stuff. So thank you so much.
Exactly. No worries. And if I can add one thing is that, it's about what I was just saying. It's that, definitely technology should be a tool. And I don't think people should feel trapped with it, because so many people are really on the screens all the time. And sometimes I really feel like I can't handle it anymore, the whole technology. And even though I master it, sometimes I just really want to get back to my guitar and just really want to do something that's just acoustic and, and so I feel like we should have this kind of like distance with technology, like say, yes, this is a tool that I'm using to make beautiful things, but don't feel trapped inside it as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alexia.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and I'm going to go back and listen to more of your sound stuff and your music stuff.